with the portfolio. Okay, right, before we go to portfolio, kita go to zero correlation, I forgot to mention just now. Right, zero correlation, that means stock A and B have no relationship at all lah. So that means returns on stock A is not correlated or is not interrelated with the returns on stock B, and also vice versa. Okay, so you can see from the diagram here on the slide shown here. Okay, so you can see stock A is a straight line, right? Returns on stock A, right, is shown in a straight line. Returns on stock B, you can see that it's subjected to volatility. It will be higher, lower, and so on. And the changes in returns on stock B, right, actually does not give any impacts on stock A. So that's why stock A is, fixed, dia punya return. Right, in other words, stock A is unaffected. Stock A's return is unaffected by the changes in what? Stock B's return. Okay, and definitely there will be no diversification effects. No diversification effects, right, at all. Okay, so stock A, if this is the case, stock A is actually, we can say that it's a risk-free asset. Maknanya no matter what happen in the economic condition that leads to the changes in the returns on stock B, but stock A still maintain, right? Stock A's return masih lagi sama. For example, kalau ekonomi kita recession, stock dia let's say dekat sini return dia 5%, masih lagi 5%. Kalau during boom time pun masih lagi 5%. Tapi stock B berubah. But stock B during good time dia naik sikit, kalau bad time dia jatuh sikit, alright? Kalau normal time mungkin dia naik sikit, and so on. Alright, stock B's return more volatile, right? Is more volatile as compared stock A. Stock A is unaffected by the economic changes. Jadi kalau you tengok dalam diagram ni, it can tells you that stock A is risk-free asset, stock B is what? Risky asset. Right? Kalau soalan tanya which one is a zero risk asset or zero risk stock, you might say that stock A. Tapi stock jaranglah dia tak berubah. A ni biasanya kalau contoh government bills, government treasury bills, government bond, right? Ataupun for example you invest your money in, let's say yang zero risk lah, dalam kes kita mungkin kita panggil for example, simple example, mungkin you store your money in tabung haji, right? Dia punya return fix macam tu, okay, unaffected. Tapi sebenarnya tak lah, sebab our money tu sebenarnya dia invest in somewhere else kan, jadi that's why kita boleh dapat dividend. Ini just the simple example, right? So that is what we meant by zero correlation, where the covariance and correlation value equals to zero. Kalau you kira tadi from our example, if you get the covariance value, right, this one, right, macam ni kita boleh nampak 0.004875 kan. Mungkin kalau you kira, in reality maybe ada stock yang dia punya value covariance and correlation tu equals to 0.00000000, very small. Bila you round off the figure, it equals to zero. Dalam kes ni, right, dia negatif ke, dia positif ke, sebab dia too small, jadi kita consider that relationship as a zero relationship lah. Okay. Okay, so this is the example, right, yang ni. Yang ini saya mention tadi, right, the covariance and correlation. Dalam kes ni correlation lah, P kan, kalau covariance sigma tu. Okay, the covariance and correlation must always between positive one and negative one. Dan you nampak kalau figure ni tadi, yang you kira tu, dia masih lagi dalam range between positive one and negative one. Dia dekat tengah-tengah kan. Dia tak boleh go beyond positive one. Kalau you dapat value of covariance and correlation dalam jawapan you tadi lebih daripada positif 1 dan juga ataupun negatif 1, maknanya jawapan itu salah. ada something wrong somewhere with your calculation lah. You kena double check, right, your calculation. And then kalau kita nak relate dengan stock, ni dia contoh example of covariance and correlation. Okay, General Motto, you invest, let's say you have 100,000 ringgit, you invest 50,000 in General Motto, another 50,000 you invest in Ford ataupun in Honda and Toyota. Both are in the same industry. Jadi bila you kira dia punya covariance, right, untuk covariance of returns of General Motto and Ford tadi, you akan dapat lebih kepada apa? Arah positive value. Okay, you akan dapat tend to get a positive amount or value. Tapi kalau you invest 100,000 tadi, 50,000 you invest in General Motto, another 50,000 you invest in technology company, let's say the IBM, right? Then both are in different industries. So that means bila you kira dia punya covariance and correlation, it tends to be lower. Dia akan approaching zero value, and then lama-lama dia akan, kalau kita kira, dia mungkin tend to get apa, negative value of covariance and correlation, right? Okay. Right, now we want to go to a portfolio. Okay, tadi kita kira untuk individual stock. Tak? Kita dah kira dah return, this is expected returns yang are had tu Let me get the symbol kat sini. Right, I copy this and then I go to the portfolio. Right. Hold on. Okay. Ni tadi. Ni. Okay. Okay. So this is actually expected return yang kita kira earlier on. Okay, on the very beginning slide. Okay, so that means this is the right, so this is for stock A lah. Okay, kalau kita buat symbol dia, let's say, can I have that one? Not tak jumpa yang, okay, saya jumpa lah. Okay, ni, so kita buat B, and then kita, okay, right, so Allah, hold on so just nak tunjukkan dekat you all lah cara kita nak buat jawapan tu nanti kan. Okay, ni dia tu sama. Okay, alright. Okay, so ni right, so kalau kita kira expected return sebelum ni equals to 0.175 and then 0.055, and then standard deviation pun dia punya simbol tadi, kena make sure you tahulah macam nak buat simbol dia. Saya terpaksa copy lah tunjuk dekat you all just in case, sebab saya takut nanti this is our first time kan doing this topic, jadi hopefully kita boleh alright. Okay, dengar saya nampak. Okay, saya masukkan dalam, kejap ya, sabar semua. Okay, dekat sini control right, this one. Okay, right, 0.115 and 0.2586, boleh? Okay, so ini standard deviation yang kita kira, right? Ini expected return yang kita kira guna formula probability tadi. Right, tapi biasanya dalam soalan dia akan minta you kira untuk individual stock dulu. Right, macam mana kita buat tadi based on the example tadi kan. Lepas tu soalan akan continue part B katakan. Question B pula dia akan minta you calculate expected returns of the portfolio. So this is kita kena apply lah information yang kita dapat daripada calculation kita tu. Okay, right. And then when you want to invest in the portfolio, the investors must decide and must determine how much of the money is going to be invested in stock A and how much is going to be invested in B. Kalau katakan you ada 100,000 ringgit tadi, you want to invest 50,000 ringgit, right, to invest in A, and another 50,000 ringgit you want to invest in B. That means you are dividing your cash tadi 100,000 50% for each. So that's 50% is known as weightage. Okay, ini kita kata tadi weightage. Alright, and this weightage dia punya symbol kita guna capital X. Right? Ini dia. So that means kalau you invest in A, dalam case kita ni, kita invest our money, kalau you ada RM100,000, RM60,000 you akan invest dalam A, RM40,000 you akan invest dalam B. So sometimes soalan dia akan bagi in terms of money, RM. Jadi you kena determine berapa persen. So dalam case ni dia dah bagi tahu siap-siap, dia dah kira dah untuk you all 60% in A of the money and 40% of the money will be invested in B. So that means this is XA, okay, right, and then this is weightage in B. Yang itu kita akan buat. Okay, so in this case, weightage kita kena determine for stock A and weightage for stock B also must be determined as well. Now, bila kita dah tahu berapa banyak we want to invest in A and B, right? And then we also have calculated the covariance and correlation. Nampak tak? Ni you can notice kalau you ada 2 stocks, maknanya you akan ada relationship satu. Dia macam analoginya ialah kalau ada suami, isteri, relationship dia satu. Kalau nak ada satu lagi relationship, maknanya si suami kena kahwin satu lagi. So you akan ada covariance yang kedua. Maksudnya you akan ada stock C. Okay, maksud dia apa? Dia ada 3 stocks. Jadi you plan to invest in 2 stocks of these 3 stocks. Jadi you punya option apa? You akan ada portfolio yang consist of stock A and B, and another portfolio mungkin akan consist of apa lagi? Stock A and B, and then stock A and C. Another portfolio you akan ada consist of stock apa? B and C. Betul tak? Betul kan? Jadi how many covariance you are going to calculate? If you have 3 stocks, you akan ada 3 covariance, you akan ada 3 correlation. Betul tak? Sebab you akan ada stock A and B, stock A and C, and stock B and C. So that means there are going to be 3 covariance and correlation. Okay, tapi since our example here, we refer to 2 stocks only, that means you only have one covariance, that is one relationship, AB atau BA, sama, benda yang sama. Okay, right, so we already calculated the covariance and correlation. Now, so how are we going to calculate the expected returns of the portfolio? So this is the formula. To calculate the expected returns of the portfolio, the formula is the weighted average of the expected returns of the individual stocks. Right, so how is it to be interpreted into the formula? So this is the formula. Right, again, R bar, that is the symbol for the expected return, but this time P. P stands for portfolio. Okay, so P is referring to portfolio, and then multiply by the weighted average. Weighted average maknanya average lah, kan? Tapi based on the weightage. weightage that we have decided to invest our money in each stock. So now weightage in stock A multiply by expected returns of stock A, and plus dengan weightage in stock B multiply with the expected returns of stock B. So all R here must be in the R heads form, maknanya expected return. So dia consistent. Okay, expected return portfolio equals to the weightage of investment, okay, in R, in A. Okay, jadi kena multiply dengan expected return stock A. And then kalau stock B, kena multiply dengan expected return stock B. Jadi dia consistent dekat situ. Okay, you must make sure you ada R bar lah semua. Okay, where weightage XA and XB are the proportion. What's the meaning of weightage? Weightage just now, I mentioned earlier, that is the percentage of your investment. Ataupun dia panggil the proportions of the total portfolio in asset A and B respectively. Right, kalau you total up, maknanya 100% lah, 60% plus 40% just now. So in this case, kita nak kira weightage in stock A just now 60% multiplied by the expected returns of stock A, the one that we have calculated earlier, and plus weightage in stock B, which is 40%, and you multiply by the expected returns of stock B as calculated earlier. Then you will get the expected returns of the portfolio 0.127. That is 12.7%. So that means you have three options now. First, you want, let's say you have 100,000 ringgit. First, you want to invest in one stocks only. Okay. In one stocks only, maknanya 100,000 tu semua beli stock A sahaja. Jadi you expect to get returns of 17.5% daripada stock A. Or another options you have, you want to invest all of your money amounting 100,000 ringgit just now in stock B only. That means you are going to get an expected returns of 5.5% from stock B. Or another options, you want to invest in both company or in both stocks. That means you want to create a portfolio, and that portfolio will consist of these two stocks that are stock A and B. But then you have to decide how much or how many percent you want to invest in A and B. So you have three options now. You want to invest in individual stock of stock A only, or stock B only, or portfolio that consists of these two stocks. Okay, if you invest in these two stocks by creating or forming a portfolio, that means you're going to get returns from this portfolio of 12.7%. Okay, so this is the expected return. And again, if you form a portfolio, and we know that every stocks carries risk, its own risk. Maknanya stock A pun ada risk dia, stock B pun ada risk dia. Kalau kita combine risk tu tadi, what happened to the portfolio risk then? So how are we going to measure the portfolio risk pula? Secara individu, the risk of stock A tadi kan, kita dah kira stock A carries higher risk as compared to stock B, right? Jadi now kita dah combine pula. Kalau combine, bermakna apa tadi? Bermakna the risk of the portfolio is going to be higher. Okay, kalau kita tengok previously last time punya yang kita kira lah calculation. Where is it? Saya kena scroll up. Okay, ni dia. Okay. Allah Akbar. Sana. Okay ni. Okay, so this is the risk kan? Ataupun dalam table tadi ada saya overlook. Hold on. This one. Kalau you tengok secara individunya, if you see here, stock A carry higher risk, okay, as compared to stock B, with the risk of 11.5% only. This one 25. So kalau kita combinekan these two stock in the portfolio, definitely kita akan kata the risk of the portfolio is going to be higher, right? Depending on the weightage tu tadi, 60% and 40%, right? Tapi you must bear in your mind, bila kita combine these two stock in the portfolio, and we know that these two stocks have a negative relationship just now, which is measured by covariance and correlation, right? So that means kita dah tahu tadi apa maksud covariance yang negatif. Kita tahu there will be a diversification effects of the risk. That means if we combines the stock A and B, there will be an offset. Alright, that means there will be a diversification effects in the portfolio tu nanti. Okay, which is if stock A drop, if the returns of stock A drop, that means we still have the returns from stock B that can offset the loss just now. So it will make by having these two stock which having a negative relationship, so that means we will be able to minimize the portfolio risk. So that means the portfolio risk is not going to be higher. Okay, kita boleh kurangkan sedikit portfolio risk tu tadi. Sebab apa? Sebab kita invest dalam dua stock yang bila kita katakan apa? Mempunyai dalam industri yang berbeza. Why is it? Because we have calculated this covariance which is a negative value. So now, how are we going to measure the risk of the portfolio? Okay, and again, the risk of the portfolio will be measured by the variance and the standard deviation. So, tetapi dalam risk of the portfolio tu tadi also will be influenced by the covariance. Kalau covariance is negatif, bermakna kita punya portfolio risk tadi is going to be minimized. Itu yang saya sebut tadi. Right? Kalau you punya covariance is positive, that means you punya portfolio risk is going to be higher. Alright? Okay, now how are we going to do that? This is the formula class. So we have to memorize the formula. Okay? So apa ni? P ni ya? Ini bukan kot. Silap ni. Okay? Okay, so this is the formula. Alright. Kalau saya tulis kat sini. Okay. Kalau kita tak ambil kira covariance tadi, kita akan tend to use the weighted average formula. Okay, iaitu kalau kita kira X, saya akan buat X A, right, square. Bila saya susah nak tunjuk kat sini, kalau whiteboard saya senang sikit tak apalah. Right, so kita memorize the formula sajalah kat sini Tapi cuma saya nak tunjuk kat you all sebenarnya dalam formula variance ni, okay, dalam formula variance you akan nampak dalam formula tu ada covariance. Okay ni, covariance, nampak tak? Okay, dekat sini kita ada formula dan formula tu tadi ada masukkan covariance. Kenapa kita masukkan covariance? Sebab kita nak tunjuk diversification effect tu tadi. Okay, kita kena ambil kira the covariance tu tadi because we want to show in the formula the effect of the effects of the relationship between the two stocks. Okay. Dan kita tahu tadi kalau stok tu tadi negative relationship, maknanya diversification effect dia become higher yang menyebabkan portfolio risk dia minimize, right? So kita ambil formula ni, kita ambil figure, masukkan, right? So what is X square? So this is the weightage in stock A, 0.6. So don't forget to square and multiply by standard deviations of stock A and don't forget to square. Alright, and then plus 2. 2 times weightage in stock A, investment in stock A, times investment in stock B, 0.4. And don't forget to multiply by covariance. Right, the covariance is a negative value. So don't forget to take or to write the negative sign in the formula for the covariance value. right? And then plus 0.4 squared, this is the weightage of investment in stock B square and multiply by standard deviations of stock B. Tapi if you notice, the standard deviation is square, ini sebenarnya adalah variance. Kalau you dah ambil variance, you don't have to square. Tapi kalau you ambil figure standard deviation, you kena square kan. Jadikan dia variance. Are you following? Right, so hopefully you understand with this part. Right, then you calculate, tekan calculator and so on. So you akan dapat standard deviation, variance of the portfolio. So I think this P is for the portfolio. Let me move the P here. Saya rasa P ni untuk ni. Okay. Boleh? So this is the standard deviations of the portfolio. Okay, right. So nak dapatkan standard deviation, kita tahulah square rootkan variance dia. Jadi kalau you dapat variance you yang ini, right, 0.02385065, then you square rootkan this value, you akan dapat standard deviations of the portfolio of 15.44%. Nampak tak? Okay, so macam ni tadi, kalau kita tengok kat table ni, kelas, right, kalau individual, inilah dia punya standard deviation, right? Kalau stock B, inilah standard deviation. Tapi kalau you combine these two stock, right? Kalau you combine secara logik ni, kita akan kata portfolio tu tadi akan mempunyai risk yang sangat tinggi. Kalau you campurkan ni tadi, mungkin you akan dapat dan you multiply dengan weightage tu tadi something 20 point something. Tapi disebabkan adanya diversification effect because of a negative covariance, so this diversification effect tadi menyebabkan portfolio risk, right, menjadi 15.44 saja. Ni tadi. Tak seperti mana yang kita fikirkan lah, right, sebab adanya covariance. Right, you can trial and error, cuba kalau you kira covariance tadi, dekat sini kita kira dapat negatif, menunjukkan adanya diversification effect menyebabkan portfolio risk hanyalah 15.44% saja. Right, what happen kalau this value is a positive? Right, if you check, right, this portfolio risk will be a bit higher than this. Sebab apa? Sebab there is no diversification effect. Why is that? Because this value a positive value. So this is what I mentioned on the first in the first part of our lecture just now, right? If the covariance and correlations are negative, right, or perfectly negative, right, so there will be a greater diversification effect. So this will make the portfolio risk minimize. Okay, and vice versa. So that is about portfolio. Right? Okay. So this is the explanation. If you put more than 2 stocks, right? This one you can read. So this one is a metric of many asset. Tadi kita discuss hanya 2 asset je, iaitu 2 stock A and B. Right? So bila kita masukkan portfolio tu tadi, lebih daripada 2 stok, maknanya kita ada stok C, kita ada stok D, E, F sampai Z, whatever stock you want to put in your portfolio. So your portfolio has many stocks now, or asset or risky asset now. So it will be looking like this lah, dan calculation dia lebih banyak lah. Right? Jadi dalam case ni, from the above metric, kita summarizekan dekat sini, the variance of the portfolio is arrived by adding up the terms in these 4 boxes. The box ini dia explain lah Right, the diagonal terms represent the variances of different security which is equal to the number of securities in the portfolio. The off diagonal terms contains the covariance. Maknanya apa? Right, the off diagonal tu tadi menunjukkan relationship between stocks. Kalau you ada stock A, B, C, D, maknanya you are going to have a covariance of A and B, A and C, A and D, A and E, and so on. And then B and C, B and D, B and so on. Right? So you are going to have so many covariance lah. in your portfolio. But you must make sure the covariance that you have in your portfolio less than +1. Okay, lagi kalau negatif lagi bagus. Sebab apa? Covariance dia akan diversification effect dia akan lebih tinggi. Alright, dan yang menyebabkan portfolio risk become lower. So as the conclusion, the variance of the returns on the portfolio, maknanya the risk, right? The risk of the portfolio with many stocks, right, is more dependent on the covariance now. It's no longer depending on the individual securities than on the variance of the individual. It's more dependent on the covariance between the individual securities than on the variance of the individual securities. Understand or not? Okay, maksud dia ialah bila you have more stocks in the portfolio, which is more than 2, maybe you could have hundreds of stock from different industry. That means you are going to have more covariance now. Okay, and there will be more negative covariance in your portfolio. So there will be a greater diversification effect in your portfolio, right? And then your portfolio risk now is actually no longer depending on the individual standard deviation. Why is that? Because individual standard deviations is offset, right? Or diversified, okay? Diversified away due to the lower covariance or due to the diversification effects. Okay, diversification effect menyebabkan the risk of the individual stocks are diversified away. Jadi yang tinggal dalam portfolio tu hanyalah covariance. So covariance lah yang becomes what? Relevant to your portfolio risk now. Okay? So this is what I mentioned about diversification effect. So if you want to read about diversification effect, you can refer to the textbook later on. I know you don't have the textbooks yet, but later on you are going to have it, right? So you can refer to page number 35, right? So what is the diversification effect? Ataupun how are we going to explain about the diversification effect? Right, now I want to compare, right, between the calculations of the risk of the portfolio by taking into consideration the covariance dengan apa calculation without taking into consideration or without the covariance. Kalau kita tengok dekat sini we compare the standard deviations of the portfolio and the weighted average of the standard deviations of individual security. Kalau kita guna formula ini, right, untuk kira standard deviations of the portfolio ni formula yang pendek ni, kita punya portfolio risk adalah 20.12%. Ini yang saya sebut tadi. Okay, di mana you ignore, you tak ambil tak consider pun the diversification effect. Maknanya you ignore the covariance. Jadi you punya portfolio risk tend to be 20.12%. But if you take into consideration, right, when you form the portfolio, you take into the consideration the covariance and you put into the formula, right, and this covariance will help you to minimize the standard deviations of the portfolio. Mana formula dia untuk dapat 15.44? Yang ini tadi. Ni kelas. Ni dia. Nampak tak? Kalau you kira apa namanya, the formula by ignoring this part. Okay, jadi you punya standard deviations of the portfolio tend to be 20.12% as now. Tapi disebabkan kita kata apa? Disebabkan adanya diversification effect which is measured by the covariance of the two stocks, then this diversification effect menyebabkan the standard deviations of the portfolio secara keseluruhan is actually apa? Lower. Only 15.44% instead of 20.12%. Understand? So that's why from now onwards, you cannot use this formula. Okay, this one So you must be careful bila you kira standard deviations of the portfolio. So you cannot use this formula. the one that I bold and the one that I highlighted in red color here. Okay, apa tak red color? Here, right, cannot be used. Okay, you must use the first formula just now. Why is that? Because the first formula taking into consideration the effects of the covariance. Okay, right. So the diversification effects applies in that formula. In this formula, it is not applying the diversification effect. In other words, it ignores the covariance. All right. Okay. All right. And then, so this is what I have mentioned to you earlier when I explained to you about the covariance and correlation. Okay, so this is the relationship between the diversification effects and the covariance. Right, we can see here, right? Dekat sini it is stated the diversification effects apply as long as there is less than perfect correlation. What does it mean? Maknanya diversification effects become greater when the covariance and correlation, dalam kes ni dia tunjuk P, correlation, right, when the correlation is less than 1. Sebab kita tahu the range of the covariance and correlation is between positive 1 and negative 1. Jadi kalau covariance and correlation less than positive 1, approaching negative 1, that means the diversification becomes greater. Okay, right, and this will make the portfolio risk become lower. Okay, in another situation, a positive covariance, right, if you get the variance, covariance and the correlation, positive value, right, so it would increase the variance of the entire portfolio. The meanings of variance of the portfolio, entire portfolio, variance ni maksudnya risk. Okay, so that means a positive covariance between two security will increase the risk of the portfolio. Alright, okay, that means there is no hedging. No hedging maknanya no diversification effect. Tak ada offset tu tadi tak ada untung yang boleh tolong offsetkan rugi yang kita tanggung dalam portfolio. Sebab apa? Sebab kebanyakannya stok dalam portfolio tu tadi adalah mempunyai positive covariance. Okay, alright, or they are in the same industry. Berbeza dengan negatif tadi, a negative covariance will decrease the variance of the portfolio. Maknanya will reduce the risk of the portfolio. This means that if one stocks tend to go up, another stock go when the other stocks goes down, or vice versa. Right? The securities returns are offsetting each other. Maknanya satu stok jatuh, satu stok tadi naik, maknanya adanya hedging dekat situ ataupun adanya diversification effect. So bila adanya hedging, bila adanya diversification effect due to the negative covariance and correlation, as a result, the risk of the entire portfolio will be reduced. Okay, will become lower. Okay, right. If both securities increase and decreases together, right, that means positive lah covariance-nya. Okay, the risk of the entire portfolio will be higher. Why is that? Again, because there is no hedging. Why there is no hedging? There is no diversification effects. Okay, due to the positive relationship or covariance and correlation. Okay, right. Okay. So the diversification can substantially reduce risk without an equivalent reduction in expected return. So this is the relationship between diversification dengan diversifications of risk dengan return, right? Right. Next, ini boleh baca sendirilah. Okay. Right. Ada soalan? So,
Tak ada, madam.
tak ada Alright.
Tak ada.
Okay, last but not least lah, before I go to the second part saya nak tunjuk dekat sini, kat you all ni, regarding the portfolio risk tadi. Kita kata tadi portfolio risk boleh minimize. Saya tak cakap pun perkataan apa, eliminated to zero, betul tak? Portfolio risk boleh dikurangkan tapi tidak boleh menjadi zero. Kenapa? Sebab kita ada risk lain yang masih lagi remain in that portfolio. So what kind of the risk that remains in the portfolio? Sebelum kita go to that part, kita kena kenal dulu the different types of the risk dalam portfolio tu. Okay, right. So there are two types of systematic risk in the portfolio. Okay, when you form a portfolio, right, definitely there is a portfolio risk, and the portfolio risk adalah bersamaan dengan, it's a functions of sorry, not a function, the portfolio risk is actually equivalent to systematic risk plus unsystematic risk. So if I show you in a formula, right, we can say that, okay, the portfolio risk, right, is actually equals to, right, systematic risk, okay, plus unsystematic risk. Okay, ni dia. So tapi portfolio risk ni tadi can be minimized, right, can be minimized. This portfolio risk, okay, can be minimized, right, via the diversification effect. So where the diversification effect comes from? That comes from the negative covariance, okay, which is due to negative covariance and correlation of two stocks. Okay, risky stock lah kita kata. Alright, maksudnya. However, kita boleh tulis dekat sini, however, right, not all risks can be eliminated, right? In other words, we can only minimize the risk. And the question here is, what risks can be minimized then? Itu kita nak tanya, right? So what risk can be minimized? So before we know that part, kita kena kenal dulu the different types of risk tadi. So what is the systematic risk? Systematic risk is an uncontrollable risk ataupun uncontrollable factors. Example, why is it uncontrollable factors? Because this risk will affect a large number of stocks. Maknanya semua stock will be facing the same risk. Okay, so risk that affects a large number of stock, that means risk that affect all stocks. Okay, so this is also known as the market risk or known as the non-diversifiable risk, because uncontrollable maknanya kita tak boleh nak diversify, tak boleh nak minimize this risk. Kita tak boleh minimize the systematic risk. Why is that? Because all stocks are facing the same risk, or all stocks are affected by the same risk. What are the risks? The risks are including GDP, inflation rates, interest rates. Nampak tak? This is the market risk. Maknanya risk yang disebabkan oleh market which is beyond our control. Ataupun kalau government tadi, kalau pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic here, is it controllable? No, right? So it's not controllable. Okay. Alright. Why is that? Because all companies are facing the same factors. That is COVID-19 dalam case tu. So we cannot minimize that risk. Maknanya tak ada offset, tak ada hedging. Tapi when it comes to the second types of risk, unsystematic risk, so this is also known as a controllable risk or controllable factors. Why is that? Because this risk, right, affect a limited number of asset ataupun this is only relating to a specific company. Okay, for example dalam kes ni labor strike, shortage of components. For example, company A and company B, right? A and B has its own risk. Iaitu kita panggil unique risk. Sometimes we call it as a unique risk ataupun specific risk, asset specific risk. Maksudnya masing-masing ada masalah masing-masing, masalah peribadi. Macam you all satu group. You all are facing the same factors, the same risk. What is the risk? COVID-19, right? And then apa lagi risk? Risk ni tak ada siapa-siapa pun yang boleh tolong cover. You tak boleh tolong kawan you untuk cover daripada COVID-19. Kawan you pula tak boleh tolong orang lain untuk cover from COVID-19. So everybody is facing the same situation here. Okay. Jadi tak boleh nak offset each other, tak boleh nak diversify the risk. Nampak tak? Jadi risk tu remain in the groups. Okay, tapi another factor is that you all masing-masing akan ada apa? Individual risk. Maksudnya masing-masing ada masalah sendiri. Contoh apa? Internet problem, maybe, right? Ada kawan you yang ada internet access yang baik. Yang kawan seorang lagi ni tak bagus, tapi seorang ni boleh cover each other. How is it? Boleh minimize ni, maknanya apa? Lecture hari ni, kawan you yang ada good internet access boleh share the videos ke, the recording of the lecture here dengan you, right? Later on. So, dia boleh offset the risk of the group. Maknanya semua orang akan dapat tahu dan dapat dengar lecture tu nanti, walaupun lambat sedikit. So that is what we meant by unsystematic risk. So unsystematic risk boleh kita diversify. Okay, contoh kalau kita cakap tentang investment, right, of stock, katakan risky asset, right, kita akan ada invest dalam katakanlah stock A, right, and then another one, some of your money you invest in stock B. Stock A ada masalah labor strike, okay, yang menyebabkan revenue of the company declines dan menyebabkan returns of from this investment decline or drop, tak ada return ataupun rugi. So you punya investment dalam company A ni tadi merugikan. Tapi at the same time you also invest in another company which is dia punya CEO is good, right? Dia punya performance is okay. Profit of the company of stock B ni tadi, company B ni tadi bagus, that makes you to get higher return. So one stock due to labor strike tadi, masalah pribadi of this company itu tadi, right, menyebabkan you rugi, and another stock of your investment tadi, you dapat untung. So untung from stock B will offset apa? Returns on stock, loss of that you incur from stock A tadi. So you offset each other, menyebabkan portfolio risk you tadi become minimum or minimize. So that is what we meant by unsystematic risk. So this risk can be eliminated by combining this asset into the portfolio, tapi you must make sure the covariance of these two stock in your portfolio is smaller ataupun is negative. Alright, so that's why kita kata portfolio risk you dekat sini. Right, kalau kita tunjuk dalam diagram, okay, hold on sebelum kita dismiss, ni dia. So this is portfolio risk you, right? You can only minimize the unsystematic risk. Nampak? Minimize. Unsystematic will become lower. Tapi systematic is you still the same ataupun still remain in your portfolio. You can only minimize but you cannot eliminate it. Right? You cannot eliminate it into zero. So that is the portfolio risk all about. So I guess that's all, right? If you have any question later on, you can ask me, all right?